You know, when you think of a heart attack, you probably picture this sudden, terrifying moment. But the truth is, it's not sudden at all. It's actually the last scene of a play that's been running inside your body for years, maybe even decades. So today, let's walk through that story from the very beginning.
So that leads to a really interesting question, right? If the chest pain isn't the start of the story, then what is? Where does it all begin? Well, to answer that, we've got to go back, way back. It all starts with this really slow, silent process happening deep inside our arteries.
All right, let's get into it. Part one of our story starts long before anyone even thinks about calling for help. This is a problem that is literally decades in the making.
So the whole thing kicks off with a condition called atherosclerosis. And the name itself is kind of perfect, actually. It's from these two Greek words that mean porridge and hard. And that's exactly what it is, these hard, lumpy buildups of fatty stuff that stick to the inside of your arteries. And over time, they just narrow that pathway for your blood, slowly but surely.
And I've got to stress, this isn't something that happens overnight. The seeds for this are planted when we're young. Then, as we move into young adulthood, our choices, what we eat, if we smoke, can really hit the accelerator on how fast this plaque builds up. By the time you reach middle age, those arteries can be seriously narrowed, and that's when things get dangerous. The stage is set for a crisis, where one of those plaques is just ready to pop.
Okay, so we've got this slow, decades-long buildup. Now let's talk about the moment it all goes wrong. We're about to shift gears from that silent, creeping problem to the sudden, all-out emergency.
This is the moment. That unstable plaque finally breaks open. Your body does what it's supposed to do. It sends in the clotting crew to fix the injury. But here's the twist. Instead of helping, the clot it forms is so massive it completely plugs up the artery, which was already narrow to begin with. Boom, total blockage. That's a coronary thrombosis. That's the heart attack.
So what does that mean for the actual heart muscle cells? The second their blood supply is cut off, they're in big trouble. First, no oxygen means no fuel, no ATP. And without that fuel, the tiny pumps that keep the cell stable just fail. That leads to this massive flood of calcium rushing into the cells. And that calcium overload, it's a disaster. It switches on these enzymes that basically start eating the cell from the inside out. The cell swells up, and eventually, it dies.
And this right here is the key difference between angina and a full-blown heart attack. Think of angina as a warning light on your car's dashboard. The artery is getting narrow, so when you push yourself, say climb some stairs, your heart needs more fuel, more blood than can squeeze through. That's when you feel pain, but then it stops when you rest. A heart attack is different. The fuel line is completely cut, the blockage is total, the pain doesn't stop, and without any blood at all, that part of the heart muscle starts to die.
Okay, so we've seen what's happening on a tiny, cellular level. Now let's zoom out to what a person actually feels. This is the body screaming for help.
We all know the classic movie heart attack, right? Someone grabs their chest, feels a crushing pain that might shoot down their left arm or up to their jaw. And yeah, that definitely happens. But it's not the whole story. It can also be a sudden struggle to breathe, breaking out in a cold sweat, feeling sick to your stomach, or just this overwhelming feeling of dread, like something is terribly wrong. All of those are alarm bells from a heart in serious trouble.
But here's something that is so important to understand. That classic picture isn't always what happens. For about 10 to 15% of people, the heart attack is silent. No huge, dramatic chest pain. This happens more often with older folks, particularly women, and people with diabetes. For them, it might just feel like extreme fatigue, weakness, or even just confusion.
And this is a great way to see exactly why this is such a big deal. Look at those coronary arteries wrapped around the heart. They're like the heart's personal fuel lines. A heart attack is nothing more and nothing less than a clog in one of those pipelines. And whatever part of the heart that pipe was feeding is now completely starved of blood and oxygen.
So the alarm bells are ringing. We know what's happening, and now it's a desperate race against time. There's a saying in cardiology, time is muscle. Every second that artery is blocked, more heart muscle is dying.
The second a patient hits the hospital doors, it's all hands on deck. They're hooked up to monitors immediately, and there's only one goal, and it is incredibly urgent. Keep them stable and get that blocked artery open, now.
The go-to treatment for this is a procedure called an angioplasty. It's pretty amazing, actually. First, they inject a special dye so they can see the arteries on an X-ray. That's called an angiogram, to pinpoint the exact spot of the blockage.
Then, they thread a super thin wire with a tiny balloon on the end right to that spot. They inflate the balloon, which just smooshes the clot and plaque out of the way. And to make sure it stays open, they leave behind this tiny metal mesh tube called a stent to act like a scaffold.
Now, if for some reason they can't do an angioplasty right away, there's a plan B, powerful clot-busting drugs. And in really serious cases where there are a lot of blockages, they might need to go to plan C, which is a full-on coronary bypass surgery. That's where surgeons literally build new roads for the blood to flow, detouring around the blocked-off areas.
So, getting that artery open stops the immediate crisis. That fire is out. But it's really just the end of one chapter. Now, a whole new one begins. The journey of healing, recovery, and, well, adapting.
The heart itself is incredible at healing. For the first few days, it's all about inflammation. Then, the cleanup crew arrives. These cells, called macrophages, come in and clear away all the dead tissue. Now, this is a really tricky time because that part of the heart wall is weaker than usual. But then, over the next few weeks, the body builds a patch, strong scar tissue. That scar can't pump like muscle can, but it makes the damaged area strong and stable again.
Okay, so now the #1 goal is making sure this never, ever happens again. And while lots of things play a role, there is one that is just head and shoulders above the rest. You have to quit smoking. I mean, if you keep smoking after a heart attack, you literally double your chances of having another one. It's the single most effective change you can make.
Right behind that is diet. Eating a heart-healthy diet, lots of fruits and vegetables, that's not just some vague, be healthy advice. It's a targeted attack on the two things that started this whole mess in the first place, cholesterol and high blood pressure.
And of course, there's exercise. Once your doctor gives you the green light, getting regular physical activity is absolutely key. It helps make the healthy part of your heart even stronger. And we're not talking about training for a marathon here. Even just consistent walking can make a world of difference.
The good news is, you're not expected to figure all this out on your own. That's what cardiac rehab programs are for. They give you a safe, supportive place to exercise, but also to learn and get coaching on how to make all these lifestyle changes actually stick, for good.
So at the end of the day, recovery is so much more than just the physical scar on the heart healing. It's about adapting to a whole new way of life. It's a total recalibration of everything, which, brings us to a really big question.
So I'll leave you with this thought. A heart attack is, without a doubt, a terrifying, life-changing crisis. But for some people, it's also the most powerful wake-up call they could ever get. It becomes this catalyst for a total shift to a healthier life. So, is it an end? Or is it, in a strange